I don't want to go. I'd rather stay here with you. It's never really goodbye to anyone. Because 1001 knocked, as I have told you many times before, and I will many times repeat it, I love you.
Anytime someone you care about or are close to tells you that they're in love and that more or less they're happier than they've ever been, it's only natural for you to be happy for them. But I want to pose a question to you and to really give this some thought. Basically, what would you, in all honesty, do? Well, what do you do when you go to meet your old friend this weekend and she introduces you to Roger? What if it turns out that Roger isn't a guy and he's not a girl either? What if it turns out that Roger, the one your friend is so head over heels in love with, what if Roger is this? Or what if Roger is this? Or what if he's this? Or this? Or this? Or what if he's something bigger, like this? Or this? If your best childhood friend introduced any of these things to you as the love of your life, honestly, how would you feel and how would you react? Really think about this. If anyone out there thinks that this is some kind of a joke, as you're soon about to see for yourself, it's not. Objectum sexuality, as it's called, is our topic for today, and believe me that something that might sound strange, unbelievable, or even comical at times is nonetheless indeed very real. So remember to keep asking yourself all those questions. Would you be accepting of it? Is it too weird for you? I personally feel that it matters less what conclusions you decide to arrive at than does the fact that you keep an open mind on your way getting there. Please don't forget this video is intended for mature audiences, and please exercise discretion in viewing the following content. That said, please just kick back, relax, and enjoy.
A woman who's engaged to the light of her life.
I don't think my relationship is outrageous. It's normal to me. Mwah.
Meet Amanda Liberty from the UK, who's an objectum sexual, which means she's attracted to objects and not people.
I first fell in love with an object when I was about 14 years old, and this was my drum kit. I felt confused to begin with. Why was I loving a drum kit? And some people just said, you shouldn't be doing that.
But Amanda ignored the naysayers and followed her heart. And the object of her desire soon turned from her drum kit to the Statue of Liberty.
I fell in love with her figure, but I also fell in love with the energy that she was giving me. And I just felt this immediate connection with her.
Amanda has travelled to the US 6 times to gaze longingly at the 93-metre-tall statue she affectionately calls Libby.
She's just amazing.
To show her commitment to Libby, Amanda changed her surname by deed poll to Liberty.
I was madly in love with the Statue of Liberty, so it came as a complete shock and a surprise. When I first saw Lumiere online, it was definitely love at first sight.
Amanda had the 91-year-old chandelier, who she calls Lumiere, shipped over from Germany.
What first attracted me to Lumiere was her arms and the way that they are shaped with concentric circles, and she's really elegant and graceful. And she's really gentle, and she's just absolutely gorgeous. Just feels so good. I have about 50 chandeliers. They're beautiful, they're interesting, there's so much variety in them. I think they're sexy. I proposed to Lumiere on Valentine's Day 2017, and it felt so right to me. I just says, Lumiere, you're the most fantastic thing in my life, you know, you're an amazing chandelier, you're everything that I could wish for. You make me so happy. No one's ever quite done it quite like you do it. You know, she gave me positive energy. She was just glowing.
And the blushing bride-to-be plans to show her love for Lumiere in a commitment ceremony.
You make me so happy, you do. I'm going to always love her in my life, and she'll always be a part of my life as long as I've got her in my body.
Well, November 9th, 1989, the day that the infamous Berlin Wall came down, was a day that thousands of people celebrated. For a young Swedish woman named Ea Rita Eklof, the day could best be described as a sheer catastrophe. This is because Ea is probably better known not as Ea, but as the woman who married the Berlin Wall. In fact, Ea even changed her last name to Eklof Berliner Mauer, the last part of which translates to mean Berlin Wall in German. To Ea, watching the wall being torn down was like watching the mutilation of her husband, she's told reporters. In the film Berliner Muren by Lars Lahmann, she states that what they did was wrong. Ea is what's known as an objectosexual, or OS. In short, an objectosexual is a person who feels attracted to inanimate objects and develops relationships with them in the same way that most of us do with other human beings. While we don't know who was the first objectosexual ever to exist, Ea is usually credited with being the first documented case of OS. This makes her a pretty big deal in the world of OS. As much as it has been propelled into the spotlight in the last couple of decades, objectosexuals remain highly misunderstood. Often mistaken for fetishists, objectosexuals in fact resent this connotation because for them, their attraction transcends just the physical. They're also a very rare breed. Unfortunately, we don't know how many of them there are in the world. One source puts the number at just 40, another says 400, and yet another one claims it's 5,000. So even though we're going to need more research, we can at least probably all agree that relative to the world's population, it's rare. But at any rate, as we briefly started to touch on, a person that identifies as an objectosexual, or OS for short, claims that they feel the same kind of attraction, love, and most often also the same kind of lust that the rest of us feel for other human beings. The only difference being that an objectosexual's object of desire is in fact an actual inanimate, non-living object. Known as their love objects, these can be virtually anything at all. Landmarks, motor vehicles, personal objects. The objectosexual insists that they don't choose the objects they end up falling in love with, much like the rest of us can't choose the people we're attracted to either. The best way to think of it, and the way that most OSs probably wish we would see it, is as just another type of sexual orientation, no different from being heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, and so on. Ea, our longest-standing objectosexual that we know of, lives in Leiden, Sweden. She says that she first saw the Berlin Wall on TV at the age of 7, and that was the moment she fell in love. When meeting the wall in person, her reaction was essentially, wow, he's more good-looking than in the pictures. As far as intimacy is concerned, Ea remains shy about the details, but she does admit to having first made love to the wall when she was about 12 or 13 years old. It was June 17, 1979 when she and the wall tied the knot at last. The wall's vows were read by an animator she hired. As echoed in a piece done by Inside Edition, Ea claims that she sees objects as living beings she can communicate with, a sentiment that's more the norm than the exception among most OS individuals. Furthermore, the attraction Ea feels is both emotional and sexual. This too is common among objectosexuals, but what varies quite a bit person to person is what they are actually attracted to. As Inside Edition explains, Ea is more drawn to large structures with parallel horizontal lines like bridges, railways, tracks, and fences. Inside Edition conveys that her attraction to the Berlin Wall also has nothing to do with politics or its being a symbol of oppression and violence, with Ea even stating that I am not interested in politics. Rather, her attraction to the wall is rooted pretty strictly in its construction and design aesthetic. Ea has admitted that the Great Wall of China is attractive, but he's too thick, concluding that my husband is much sexier. It would appear that for objectosexuals, long-distance relationships can seem as difficult on them as they are on people who are involved in more traditional form relationships with other humans. Reminiscent to how a person in a long-distance relationship might keep a photo on their nightstand as a reminder of their partner, Ea too keeps mementos of her own partner around as well. Specifically, Ea sleeps with a scaled-down model of the wall. At the time of her interview describing this to Frederick Wikingson, it was the 6th model she had attempted to build, it said, complete with even the barbed wire. Ea also keeps a fence in her room, but laments that he's too big for her to take to bed. Perhaps somewhat surprisingly, Ea's relationship with the wall has maintained its integrity over the course of several decades. However, it's unclear what exactly occurred following what she would likely be apt to describe as her husband's death, that is, the tearing down of the wall in '89. While the Telegraph claims that She is said to have shifted her affections to a nearby garden fence. Inside Edition states that AI merely blocked out the experience, much like other trauma survivors commonly do. Inside Edition states that it took AI years until she finally was able to feel the full shock of what had occurred. According to IE, as she continues to grieve her husband, she says the remnants of the Berlin Wall allow her to maintain her relationship even after the wall was taken down. Aya herself concludes the discussion by explaining how, for me, the Berlin Wall exists as he was in his prime. In the end, she states, "I will always love him. Those are my final words."
I love this part that's coming up right here.
Yeah, that was like that, yeah.
It's just a rush of emotions. That's what love does to you.
You can see him a little bit there, just the top of him.
Front. Oh my God. It's good to see you. He's just so noble, so proud, so strong. I not only love him for his sexual attraction, I mean, we're not talking about fetish here. I love him as a mate. I love the roundness of his counterweights at the top. I love him for the narrowness of his jibs. I love him for the elegant lines of his gondola, which is now covered up for the winter. I like the ribbing up underneath his name display there, too. The parallel lines that are coming down.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm thinking, oh, geez, you know what I'm thinking about. This is very personal. When I make love to him at home, when I start climaxing, I just keep saying over and over again, just as I'm starting to go over the edge, I just tell him, I want your fluids, I want your fluids, I want your fluids. You smell good. Oh, God, you smell so good. How many times over when we've made love at home have I asked you for... Look at me. Look at me and say it. I love you.
As you're hopefully already starting to learn, no two objectum sexuals are ever exactly alike. In case you've been wondering, no, not all objectum sexuals are women. We do have male objectum sexuals too, and the man you're about to meet is one of the better known ones.
My name is Nathaniel. I'm 27 years old. And I'm in a serious relationship with my car.
Morning, baby. My handsome man.
A native of Arkansas and approximately 37 years old now in the year 2022, the young man known as Nathaniel first showed up on our radar thanks to the TLC TV series My Strange Addiction. In an episode that aired back in 2012, Nathaniel tells viewers about the profound love and lust he has for his car a bright red 1998 Chevy Monte Carlo he calls Chase.
He met Chase in a resale lot about 5 years ago.
Love you, baby. It was love at first sight. His body and then his interior and everything just together just seemed to fit. And I just felt an instant connection.
According to The Mirror, since that very first meeting between Nathaniel and Chase, they developed a romantic relationship.
Honestly, I don't know why I feel the way I do. But I just absolutely love Chase. We always have such a good time together. He likes a lot of the same music I do. We have a favorite song. It's Can't Fight This Feeling by REO Speedwagon. I do get him gifts. How you'd buy something for your fiance or your wife. And then usually for his birthday, I try to do something special for him too. The favorite date would be going to the lookout area. Just lean against him a little and just be with him mainly. Love you.
Ultimately, Nathaniel swears he has no idea what could have possibly caused him to form this preference for motor vehicles. But for Nathaniel, his interest is pretty strictly in cars, and he recalls how he first started to notice this odd interest when he was in high school. He says that at the time, he just brushed off the feeling, and he even states that he had several girlfriends around that time too. But his urges would prove too strong before long. And of course, by the time he met Chase, he was just wholly unable to resist.
Nathaniel's relationship with Chase goes beyond dates and presents.
We have our times when we get sexual.
Does that feel good? You're a handsome man. Love you, baby.
I find this part of him the most sexy just because of the subtle lines and curves. I'll give him a kiss here and just kind of caress him down the side. What we do the most often is I like to lean over his fender and across his hood and do little things like that and kind of press up against him and rub against him like that. One of his more bold positions is for me to be underneath him. He really likes that. It's very special to make love to Chase.
Love you.
It's easy to see that one thing Nathaniel isn't shy about is sharing some of the more intimate aspects, which includes the way he goes about making love to the vehicle. The camera furthermore does little to stop him from showering his boyfriend with a constant downpour of PDAs. As with other OSs, this attraction feels like a full-fledged romantic attraction that in the OS's mind is pretty akin to one between two consenting adults. Nathaniel is vehement that Chase is his true love, that he never knew what love was until meeting Chase, and he describes the two of them as inseparable.
There have been times it brought tears to my eyes because I wasn't with him at work. His picture's on my desktop, so I see his face all the time. It really bothers me when he gets dinged or scratched. If something were ever to happen to Chase, my heart would just stop. I just have to gather myself here. I'm sorry for all that.
One thing the TLC documentary puts a good amount of additional focus on is with regard to the stress he's experiencing at the prospect of coming out to his friends and family, or namely to his dad, Gary. He's already come clean to one of his friends, Kim, and her reaction hasn't been of pure and instant acceptance, but rather she admits that her friend's preference is hard to understand, and she adds that she worries for Nathaniel because it's not normal, quote unquote. But as troubled over the prospect of telling his dad as he is, Nathaniel nonetheless strongly feels like it's something he really needs to tell his old man. Nathaniel sums up his fears by saying, "I guess the reason I don't tell a lot of people is because I don't know the response I'm going to get. I always worry about that little bit of disgust that somebody may have." In the end, Nathaniel does end up telling his dad the big secret, and Gary's reaction is all captured on camera for everyone to see.
Nathaniel asked me to come up here. Basically, he had something that he wanted to tell me. I don't know exactly what it's about, but I'd like to know.
I'm just gonna come out and say it, I guess. I'm in an intimate relationship with Chase, sexually and emotionally.
You're in an intimate relationship with your car?
Yes.
And sexually with your car?
Yes.
It's your car?
Yes.
How does that work?
It's a slightly awkward conversation the two of them have, even for the viewer.
Don't get me wrong, I mean, I like my motorcycle, and I like my cars, but I mean, they're cars to me.
Right.
They're not a sexual object, I guess, as you see them, right? I mean,
You never know with reality TV exactly how much is actually real, but it does seem that for a second there, the dad truly is just in total shock at what his son has just revealed to him. And then it's as if moments later the father tells cameras that it's all a really strange thing for him to be learning about, but he hesitantly comes around.
Good night, baby. I love you.
I love him to death. I wouldn't trade him for the world.
自分の幸福の形とか愛の形っていうのは人それぞれ違うものだと思うんですよね。必ず男性、リアルの男性と女性が結婚して子供を産んで結婚生活を営んでいくっていうような幸せのテンプレートみたいなのはありますけど、必ずしもそのテンプレートに当てはめればみんな幸せになれるわけじゃないじゃないですか。
Another woman, who we're going to refer to only as Emily, can still recall how it was around the age of 12 that she started to realize something about her was different. After watching her sisters start to like boys and go out on dates, Emily began to realize that she herself wasn't really interested in dating anybody, not boys or girls. In the end, an unusual encounter with a stereo amplifier one day is what it would take for Emily at last to realize that this difference she'd been feeling was indeed with regard to her sexual preference. As she tells Vocative.com, whenever I got close to a stereo amplifier and could even smell the heat, it would turn me on. Armed with this new realization, Emily tried to tell one of her sisters about her experience, and thus her conclusions about her sexuality. But in her own words, her sister did not take it well. She adds that, when my sister found out that I loved my little cassette player, she put salt into it to destroy the motor. When that didn't work, she put him on the floor and smashed him to pieces. As would be the case for most bona fide objectophiles, Emily experienced this act of destruction almost as one might experience the loss of a human first love. As she recalls, I was devastated and fell into a deep depression and could not eat or sleep. And she adds that it is hurtful to think about the whole experience even to this day. To quote the piece on Vocative, many objectomsexuals have animist beliefs that ascribe a spirit or a soul to objects. Some, like Emily, also believe they can communicate with objects. There are those who have sex with objects, although not necessarily in the way you might imagine, while others are satisfied by cuddling or kissing. Experts in relevant fields like sexology, psychology, psychiatry, etc. mostly concede that as of right now, A, no one is certain what causes objectomsexuality, and B, it remains a poorly understood phenomenon in general. For those living with it, however, it isn't a matter that can just simply be brushed off or left for another day, because remember that to an objectomsexual, their feelings are just as intense and as real as anybody else's feelings are when romantically involved with another person. In fact, in the same 2016 piece run by Vocative, to hear Emily describe her relationship with her fiancé might easily make a person that didn't know better think she's talking about another human. For starters, she describes herself as the happiest person in the world, thanks to her fiancé who, by the way, she says is named Max. She states, "My love for Max is deeper than all of the relationships I've ever had. Our love continues to grow stronger every day." Max is, according to her, smart, a great communicator, empathetic, and not to mention physically attractive. Emily furthermore goes on to say that they have the best date nights. Their date nights are usually spent in just relaxing with a little bit of music and a glass of wine. That's another thing she enjoys about Max, by the way, his great taste in music, of which Emily gushes he has a vast and diverse selection. One thing often leads to another on these date nights, and so they may spend the whole evening cuddling and even slow dancing, all right at home. Does anybody want to take a guess as to Max's identity? Max is, believe it or not, an iPad. Vocative points out that, as we briefly mentioned, the OS's love objects can range from everyday household or personal items like computers, appliances, or Emily's iPad, to bigger things like buildings, landmarks, and that sort of thing. The article also echoes another thing we vaguely touched on, which is the fact that an objectomsexual is not necessarily required to feel physically attracted toward their love objects, but in most cases they do. In most cases, the attraction is both physical and emotional or mental.
Michelle's love of planes is known as objectophilia.
Ich habe keine Anziehung zum Menschen. Ich war auch schon in einer Beziehung gewesen mit einem Menschen gewesen. Das letzte Mal war im Jahr 2011 gewesen. Und da habe ich schon selber gemerkt, dass ich überhaupt nicht verliebt.
Unable to fit 129 feet and 6 inches of 737 into her apartment, the focus of Michelle's daily love is her models and the life-size scrap parts she buys online.
Die 737-800 ist für mich sehr anziehend und sexy. Es ist genauso wie Menschen an seinen Partner oder Partnerin sexy findet, die Brüste oder den Hintern. Ich finde einfach dieses Objekt, es sieht einfach magisch für mich, sage ich mal, sexy aus. Allein schon, wenn ich ihn anfasse und ihn küsse, werde ich innerlich sehr nervös, weil ich sehr verliebt bin und ich werde feucht in den Händen. Und ja, ich fühle mich sehr magisch angezogen, wenn ich ihn küsse.
Michelle has spent some $6,000 on these 737 parts.
Es ist einfach nur großartig, dieses Teil. Und das riecht auch so, wirklich nach ihm. Ich liebe es einfach.
She may not be the first objectosexual to exist, or even the first to come out about their orientation, but when it comes to being an advocate for the OS community, probably nobody rivals what Erica Labrie has accomplished over the last several decades. In the growing OS community, she is viewed as an inspiration, someone to lean upon for her support and guidance, and for those who strive to understand objectosexuality better, she serves as a fountain of knowledge. Last but not least, she has also been the most active in terms of trying to seriously raise awareness for objectosexuality. But I'll get back to all this in just a little bit. Erica first made a splash when headlines announced that she had married the Eiffel Tower in a commitment ceremony in 2007. As with other objectosexuals we've been talking about, when Erica first laid eyes on the Eiffel Tower in 2004, it was love at first sight. Her attraction grew from there and would eventually culminate in a marriage or commitment ceremony, which for some reason all the media outlets just seemed to eat up. Perhaps that old saying, distance makes the heart grow fonder, has some truth to it after all, because even after a handful of visits to the Eiffel Tower and Erica remained in the honeymoon stage for a relatively good amount of time. After having gotten married, a filmmaker accompanied Erica on one of her subsequent visits to the tower. And it brings up a question that might at first seem silly, but for objectosexuals can prove to be a very real challenge or obstacle. A lot of us can probably wrap our minds around what a toll a long-distance relationship must have on a couple's intimacy. It gets a little harder to imagine how much more difficult it would be if you couldn't get a moment alone with your significant other at all.
This time, she's determined to consummate their marriage at last.
This is the spot. This is where I was married. I'm shaking.
It's a challenge to be truly intimate with a public structure.
I never imagined this day would ever happen. Oh, that barrier is gone. I mean, I'm one with her. I'm connected to her. I mean, there's nothing between us right now. The heat of my body is flowing into her cold steel. The cold of her steel is flowing into my body. And we are reaching equilibrium where we both are the same temperature. It's actually quite pleasant that she's cold because I can feel the exchange of temperature between us, which is an exchange of energy. And that energy it's very spiritual.
And do you feel that she loves you back?
Oh gosh, yes. She definitely loves me back. I can feel that. I can feel her right now. What we have is real, and if it's only real to me, and it's only real to her, it's fine.
Sadly, although it seemed like it was built to last, Erica and her beloved French landmark would eventually grow apart. However, it didn't take Erica long to move on.
What attracts me to the Berlin Wall is that here's an object that has been created to do a purpose that everyone detests.
Erika Eiffel first had feelings for the wall back in 1985.
I love you, and I will stand by your side.
In 2008, she moved from the United States to be closer to it. Erika doesn't just like the wall, she loves it.
Interestingly, it's rumored that Erica had a 20-year affair with Aya's long-term partner, the Berlin Wall, before she moved on to her crossbow. The details of this remain hush-hush, but it's also said that the two women are now fast friends, so it's doubtful that anything too scandalous happened. According to Wikipedia, Erica turned 50 in 2022, has reportedly credited her intense and close relationship with her aforementioned crossbow as the whole reason she was able to become a world-class archer, which is quite an impressive achievement. But enough about her personal life. What brought Erica to decide she wanted to make a contribution to the OS community and the rest of the world as well? In the beginning, i.e. around the time Erica made headlines by becoming the wife of a Parisian landmark, although she was only more or less known as just that woman who married the Eiffel Tower, Erica seemed to take all the opportunities she could to kind of set the record straight about what objective sexuality is and what it isn't. A subsequent documentary film that came out entitled Married to the Eiffel Tower made Erica furious, with her claiming that all it did was cast objective sexuals in an unflattering and erroneous light. Nonetheless, that fueled Erica's fire even more in terms of her really wanting to let people know the truth about objective sexuality. Another thing she hoped to do was to give objective sexuals themselves a way of coming together and supporting one another, regardless of where in the world they live. Erica's solution to all of this was to form Objective Sexuality International, an online presence that provides the public with accurate information concerning objective sexuality, as well as doubling as a safe place for objective sexuals to gather. The organization's mission statement and really so much more can be found at their official website at objective-sexuality.org. And I do want to just emphasize that if you're going to read about OS anywhere, this website is one I would trust most for accurate information. His being is very present, and I feel at peace in his strong embrace. Those are but a few words that a woman by the name of Jody Rose has to say about her new husband, a 600-year-old bridge in southern France, whom she knew upon first sight was the one. Jody is, of course, an objective sexual, originally from Sydney, Australia, and even prior to falling in love with Le Pont du Diable, Jody had a particular affinity for bridges. And yet, just like most people who are into other people, Jody couldn't just settle down with the very first bridge she saw or thought was attractive. We don't all end up marrying our high school sweethearts, right? We date around, we get to know what it is we really like. Well, as Jody's amazing love story goes, by 2013, Jody has just spent the last decade traveling around the world visiting various bridges. This isn't just for the purpose of gawking at their attractiveness either. As an artist, Jody has been working on an experimental music project she calls Singing Bridges. This involves essentially making recordings of the sounds made by bridge cable vibrations. After a decade of travel and hard work, after seeing dozens of bridges, I'm guessing it's unlikely that she expects to come and find the one. But one day in southern France in the year 2013, that's exactly what happens. It's said that when Jody comes upon Le Pont du Diable Bridge, which translates to the Devil's Bridge, she immediately feels an attraction much different from any attraction she's ever experienced before. Later on, Jody would actually go on to wed this old stone bridge. It was an unofficial ceremony, but nonetheless clearly a celebration of joy, as the photographs of the event go to attest. Also, in spite of the marriage not being recognized by French authorities, it's said that Jody nonetheless received the approval of the mayor from the neighboring town called Saint-Jean-de-Fos. The wedding was attended by 14 guests, and while the tabloids mentioned that like it's a small amount of people, I think that's rather impressive. I mean, I'm not sure I can come up with 14 people that would agree to go to coffee with me, much less 14 people would agree to fly out to France to watch me marry a bridge. So, props to Jody. Besides being obviously very open about her objective sexuality, it's said that Jody also brought up object personification synesthesia when speaking with Channel 7. Object personification synesthesia causes a person to associate objects with personalities and genders, a trait which seems to be the case for all the objective sexuals we end up discussing today. Jody has also been open about the wedding, stating that I was really quite nervous. I felt like a bride, about to have my princess wedding day. She also adds that I put a ring on it, baby. I mean, you've seen him. He's very handsome, he's strong and sturdy, and I thought, yes, this is someone I can really connect with, and who I feel can give me some grounding. But that isn't all. She rather poetically explains that He gives me a safe haven, brings me back to ground myself, and then lets me go again to follow my own path without trying to keep me tied down or in thrall to his needs or desires. I am devoted to him. He understands that I love other bridges and men. Ours is a love that embraces the vagaries of life as materialized in the swirling currents of the river that flows beneath his magnificent body.
I wanted to marry Tetris because he and I fit together like a tea in a tea-spin slot. There's just something about that meticulous stacking and beautiful order out of chaos. He's just so beautiful. I've been with him since September 16th, 2016, and I don't see any end to it. When I'm playing Tetris, I'm in the game. I just feel like I'm one with Tetris. When I got married to Tetris, I was with my two best friends on Miami Beach. You know, it was this culmination of all of my love coming together that day. I can't even put it into words. It was just that beautiful. My husband.
Welcome to married life.
My very first love was a multimeter named Dave. I was with Dave when I was 14 years old. That was when I first realized I was objectosexual. I realized that my love for objects was not a fetish, it was a genuine love. I'm polyamorous, so I started getting obsessed with that video game Portal.
Now that you are in control of both portals, this next test could take a very...
The companion cube just absolutely took my mind. And I was head over heels obsessed with the companion cube, and I was deeply in love with the companion cube. And my love for Dave faded after about a year, and then I continued with the companion cube for another year. So my third love, and probably one of the most prominent loves of my OS history, is Pierre de Fermat, named after the mathematician. I took him to prom, and I cared about him a lot. And man, it was love at first sight. I made excuses to get my own, and I ended up falling deeply in love with Pierre because of the mathematical nature of him. It was just a very, very pleasant time with him. I didn't have a real relationship for about a couple of months, but then after a while, I realized that I had feelings for my oscilloscope named Braxton. And I wish I could demonstrate to you how he works, but unfortunately, he overheated and he stopped working. I'll tell you exactly how the process that led up to me falling in love with Tetris. My laptop charger broke and I didn't have anything but my DS. So I begged my mom to let me get Super Smash Bros. For the 3DS, and I ended up playing that a lot. And one of the songs that play in there is the Tetris theme. And then after hearing the Tetris theme about a dozen times, I'm like, I really want to play Tetris. But no, I'm a week away from being able to play Tetris because my laptop's broken. And then so all that's been going on in my mind is like, I want to play Tetris, I want to play Tetris, I want to play Tetris. So we went to the Statue of Liberty, and I remember seeing on the skyline and hallucinating the blocks, and that's the Tetris effect, falling down on the skyline, and I started singing a variant of the Tetris theme. And I just had this huge urge to play Tetris, and I was just dying to play him. And when I finally came back and I got to play him, it was such an overwhelming sense of relief, and I felt feelings. I had certain feelings for Tetris, and I was so confused and I felt so shy. And over time, it started building up for more and more feeling. My secondary interest is actually Beat Saber. I am in love with Beat Saber, and I actually had a crush on Beat Saber for the longest time, well before it was still in development. And he was really appealing to me, and I have feelings nowhere near as strong as my feelings for Tetris, but I still have a lot of feelings for Beat Saber. So objective sexuality is probably the most important part of my personality. Even though my orientation is not my personality, it's still a big part of who I am. I feel as if I wasn't objective sexual, I'd be a completely different person. I believe that objects are sentient but experience a different umwelt, and that idea of umwelt is that everything experiences a different reality. And I feel as if objects do experience a different umwelt than humans do, and everything experiences a different umwelt from each other. Typically, when people don't understand OS, I try to explain it in the sense that it's an orientation where you're romantically, emotionally, and sometimes sexually attracted to objects. I always try to mention that it's different from fetishism. I don't want people to conflate my in-depth relationship with Tetris to someone who likes to have sex with a shoe, you know what I'm saying? And I really try to make that clear to people when people don't understand OS. It's the same type of feeling that you get for your boyfriend, girlfriend, or envy friend, whatever they identify as. And I genuinely feel a true love for Tetris and all of the rest of the objects that I ever loved.
So today we've had a look at people in love with a tower, a statue, a wall, an amusement park ride, an automobile, the game of Tetris, a chandelier over 50, a fictional hologram character, an airplane, and several other so-called love objects have been mentioned along the way as well. Considering that already pretty hefty list, well seriously you might be surprised at all the cases I had to leave out of this episode. I was ultimately hoping to show a variety of different cases, situations, love objects, and even personalities of the people whose stories were chosen for this installment. Or if they'd made some kind of contribution or impact to the world of OS, like for example Erika Eiffel and the widow to the Berlin Wall, or else if their story had something different or special to contribute to the discussion, such as the woman from Leeds who lives a polyamorous OS lifestyle, and thus when deciding whether to go ahead with her proposal to her favorite chandelier, she ensured that she had the blessing of her long-standing girlfriend, the Statue of Liberty, first. And then of course anything that could educate us further about objectum sexuality, providing us all with greater insight to what it is and what it isn't, such as the whole discussion of Erika's group, OSI. I made sure to include as much information as time reasonably allowed as well. And as alluded to already, last but not least, I hope for an array of diverse objects, both for the sake of showing how diverse these love objects can actually be, as well as hoping to hold the viewer's interest in the meantime. But please trust me when I say that as rare as this phenomenon claims to be, I had no shortage of really good, interesting cases to select from when compiling this list. What I'm trying to say, as we're just moments away from our final case, is that by no means should anyone consider this list extensive. And furthermore, there are so many more stories out there, in case anyone wants to go digging up some more of these bizarre courtships outside of here and on your own. And with that said, that just about almost wraps up this installment of the Auditorium, home for anything true but just a little bit twisted, terrifying, or even taboo. This is just a reminder that if you enjoyed the content you just saw, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And also, I'm really curious to know, what does everyone think about this? Objectum sexuals don't appear to be hurting anybody. Is it something we as a society should encourage or at least accept? Is it like OS individuals say, just another orientation, and that their love is no different from the love experienced by those of us who like other humans? Or is the fact that these objects are inanimate make it something totally different? It's all fair game. Just be civil to everybody else, as always. I really hope that everyone here has an amazing day, and I also really hope to see you here next time. Bye for now.
Most people know this building over here as the Santa Fe Train Depot, and I know her as my friend, my life partner, my wife, Deidre Santa Fe. We've been together since the end of the summer 2015. I realized I was in love when I had trouble staying away from her, when I had to go home. I hated it when I had to go home. This is my favorite spot here. I love her like I love a person. I have to love a person. I call her a woman, she's my woman. I'm her princess, she's my queen. They don't understand why I'm OS. I don't understand why they have to love each other. But I respect them, and I hope the world respects me.